Good evening, everybody. How y'all doing? I believe we're live. Um, I'm semi-distracted at the moment. Bear with me as I sort out little bits of admin here and there. Good to see you again. Back-to-back days is always interesting, isn't it? Because for those of you who weren't here, we were live yesterday. Peace to everyone in the chat, the regular faces and the new Wesker, Retain Ascension, House dot creator. Hello. That name seems new. It could be. I'm not sure, but hello. Chematology, Rally, Hervé Dia, Croifadas. Oh, whose name I never know how to say. Edward, Silly Moo. How are y'all doing? It's good to have you all here. I've got a cup of tea. It's late. I've been running around, and this is actually one of the first opportunities I've had just to sit down in the last 6 hours. So excuse me for indulging myself a bit. The thing about it is when I force myself to lock these live streams in, and then I force myself to start on time, because if I didn't lock them in beforehand, then I just wouldn't do them. I'd always make an excuse or find an excuse to chill out, relax. After a long, hard day's work, it's hard to. Well, I'm not complaining, but it is hard to kind of get up and do one of these live streams. So the only way I can convince myself to definitely do it is by locking it in. So, and then say, okay, cool. Let me be a man of my word. Let my word be my bond. So yeah, there you go. How's it going, that ninja? I'm fine. How are you? Kalnari, what's going on? All right, we've got a bit of a crowd forming now. How many? 43, I believe. I can see active. Yep, 43 active. That's good numbers. Boom, boom, boom. TKM got me permanently banned from ancient Egyptian Reddit for posting your images of royal. Nice. They banned you. I mean, that's fair, isn't it? So what did you post? My reconstructions or the mummies? You said royal mummies. So you must mean my reconstructions that you posted there. Yeah, they hate seeing how alike the statues they look. I mean, case in point, look at the screen. And I'm not saying this to toot my own horn. I say this and I build these reconstructions because they've spent the last 200 years convincing the world that ancient Egyptian artwork is not realistic and that you can't really create normal humans out of them. They're just stylistic. And yet I've been able to create perfectly anthropomorphically sound human beings from pretty much all ancient Egyptian artwork, proving that their relation to humanity was never the issue. The issue was the kind of humans the artwork produced. That was always the issue. So I'm not surprised you got banned. Alfarius Knox, I imagine the Queen T reconstruction or the Queen Amos Nefertari wound them right up because it was just probably so bang on the money. Had them pulling their hair out like, no, we don't want to see it. My eyes. I'm sorry. As you can see, I'm not gonna lie, I do get a kick out of the reaction I get from the Eurocentric / Arab-centric dissenters. I get as much enjoyment out of seeing them get angry as I do at seeing my melanated brothers and sisters happy. I'm not gonna lie. There's a bit of both, and it's not. This is not me saying I've got a particular disdain for people who try to exclude. I'm not saying everyone has to have my perspective because everyone in the whole world has had a job done on them when it comes to the interpretation of history. Everyone in the whole world, we're all kind of victims of misinformation. So I totally empathetic for the fact that not everybody is going to be on my page. That's absolutely fine. What I can't stand, and this is what you only get out of that kind of like modern E4E Egyptian crowd, is when they turn around and they go, the Egyptians want black, like they use black. They use it as an excluder. It's like they were anything but black. And that grinds my gears. That really irritates me, because like, no, there's one thing for you to say we don't believe they were all black, which I think is incorrect, but it's fine. I'll ride with you. It's one thing for you to say we don't believe they were all black. We believe there were some black, some were black, some weren't, this, that, and the other. Or it's another thing to say, you know, the Egyptians were like the modern Egyptians now, who everyone knows are a mixture. Okay, there is a black, it's now a minority, but there's still a mixture. But when they turn around and they try and act like everything black is foreign, yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I enjoy irritating them, because like, if you want to be that stupid, you know, you want to engage in that level of pettiness, yeah, I can be very petty. Yeah. Anyway, even all, let's get onto it. So the Pyramid Age. Who knows the character who's on the screen at the moment? If you know the name, put it in the chat and tell me what you think of the reconstruction, because this is one of them actually that we're seeing on the screen. We're going to cover some of the pyramid builders who have already done reconstructions of. Khufu, good guess, but not correct, Hervé. Thank you very much, though. Not far off in time. Same dynasty. Someone else said Khufu. Lots of Khufus. I thought everyone would be familiar with this statue. That's actually quite surprising. Cool. It's not Khufu. Keep guessing. Keep guessing. Sneferu, also same dynasty. Not correct. Chematology is the first one off the mark. It's Menkaure. I actually thought everybody would be familiar with this, because Menkaure is the one who has all those giant triad statues. This being one of them. But clearly not as familiar to people as I initially thought. But a lot of people have got it now. A lot of people are getting it now. Yes, it's definitely Menkaure. So what we're going to do today, I'm going to show you a range of reconstructions I've done. Quick question. Sorry, another quick question. How many people have seen this reconstruction already? Type 1 if you have, and 2 if you have not, in the chat now. If you've already seen this particular reconstruction that's on the screen, type 1 in the chat. If you've never seen it before, it's totally new to you, type 2 in the chat. I want to see how well circulated this was. So I've got a few 1s, 2. I should do a poll, but can't bothered. Just type 1 in the chat. 2s, so a few 2s. Let's come. Yeah, hit the like button as you're typing 1 or 2. Everyone who's on the call, everyone who's on the live stream right now, whether or not you normally participate, I want you to give me a 1 or 2, depending on whether or not you've seen this reconstruction of Menkaure before. Right, this is 1. Patrinus is 1. Okay, 1. A few 1s coming through. More 1s and 2s so far. That ninja says 2. Not displayed as much as others. Yeah, that's one of the issues. Retain ascension. That is one of the issues, which is why I'm doing the live stream today, because I thought to myself, I love these reconstructions and I haven't circulated them with as much fervor as I normally do. So it looks about 50-50. So at the moment, it's about half of you have seen and half of you have not, which is okay. All right. Another quick question. For those of you who have seen it, just type what platform you've seen it on. So if you saw on Insta, type Insta. If it was on YouTube, type YT. If it was TikTok, type TikTok. Just let me know. I'm just kind of trying to get a feel for how people have been interacting with these reconstructions. I have not seen the most recent of Ramesses II. Tell me who it's by, because I'm not sure which one you're talking about. Is there a brand new one? Because I've seen Mariah's latest, which was released last year, and I saw Carolyn Wilkinson's one, which was released the year before. But I don't know if there's been another. Is there a new? Looks a lot more like a black man. Okay, that's what we call the. I don't want to say Afrocentric because it's not. That's what I call the new Africana scholar impact there. If it's looking more, I'm not surprised they're coming around. We've forced their hand. They haven't got a choice. Instagram, IGN, and YouTube. Okay. I do want to see that though. You need to drop a link, sir, Mr. Ninja. Yeah, you need to drop a link. All right. Let us get underway today. So I don't know where to start. All right, so I think a good place for us to start would be, we're covering 4 reconstructions today. So let me just kind of like list those to you so everyone knows who we're going to be covering. We're going to be covering in no exact order. I'm not sure who I'm going to do first. We're going to be covering Djoser, Djedefre, Khafre, and Menkaure. So I've done reconstructions of all 4 of those. I had a really busy period towards the end of last year where I just went a bit ham and done loads of reconstructions. And I wasn't that good at sharing them, as you guys can see, because half of you have seen this reconstruction, for instance, and half of you have not. But I was really busy in that period and I managed to get a lot out. So I need to do these videos just to know that I've made a good effort to share them. Now, little spoiler I can post out there, only myself and Wesker in the chat will know, is that we've been doing some work which is going to make my reconstructions, my processes, everything that we do a lot more visible and a lot more available. Okay, so it's coming. Hopefully, God willing, by the end of this week, you guys, I'm going to be dropping something that is a big deal, something that's been in the works for some time now. Is going to be dropping on you guys. So yeah, I'll give you the update probably as a community post in YT. But when we go live, it's gonna be a big deal. So yeah, I'll let you know about that anyway. So anyway, you know about that now. Just hold tight. It's gonna be coming soon. But yeah, 4 reconstructions that I want to show you today out of the hash of reconstructions that I did last year, because I did quite a few of them. But these 4 I thought were significant. I didn't do them back to back. I don't think I jumped around, but I then realized, hey, I've now got 4 of the pyramid builders, which is quite significant. So I thought, well, there's a theme there, a nice little theme tying them all together. So I thought, let me just do a single live stream where I reveal or show you all 4 of these reconstructions and the process that went into building all of them. Okay. That ninja has sent me the reconstruction on Discord. Guys, as you're there chilling out, I feel like I need to look at this. So just bear with me. My Discord is already open. I need to see what this thing looks like. I need to see what it looks like. This is let me see what's going on here. Let me see if it actually looks more African. Right, claiming. So who's done this week? Oh, Zai Hawass. Oh, he better not be involved in it. Oh, okay. I can see your point. I feel like I've seen this one before. Okay. Interesting. Well, let me continue reading. It will. This is interesting. Has this been commissioned by Zawi Hawass? Digital reconstruction. So I'm trying to proofread it really quickly. You guys are probably wondering what I'm looking at. Let me share the screen. I'm going to drag it onto the screen. So look, new reconstruction of Ramesses. I mean, complexion aside, I kind of agree with you. That looks like an African man. you know, that looks like an African man. And, you know, they can cope as much as they want with their kind of like lightening of the complexion. But even with the lights, I mean, I've got, it looks like my brother. It looks like my older brother. This looks like a black man. And I'll be really surprised that this is commissioned by Zahi Hawass. I'm just looking at the length of the alveolar region here. That's a really African trait, that long alveolar. Obviously thick and full lips. The nose is almost as broad as the mouth. It's either a really normal African man or a really strange looking Arab man. So, you know, anybody could even without darkening up, it just looks like an African man to me. I think the only thing throwing us off is the kind of the pink here, which is totally unnecessary. Get rid of that pink shade that's in the middle of his face. Get rid of that pink. There was no pink. Give him that reddish brown, that Egyptian reddish brown, and I'm sure the ancient Egyptian reddish brown. I'm sure everyone can see that there's no two ways about the fact that this looks like an African man. So yeah, there you go. Yeah, that was a good little sidetrack there, Mr. Ninja. I feel like they're making concessions because they have no choice. They realize they have no credibility. I'm sorry. That's my interpretation. And you guys could be, oh, you're being very that's being a little bit, you know, arrogant. Nah, they're making concessions because they have no choice. Okay, their original stance had no credibility. Zahi Hawass's Tutankhamun reconstructions are a laughing stock, and he knows that. He's seen our reconstructions. He knows what's happening in our space, and he's very aware that we're more credible. So yeah, I'm not surprised that the concessions have been made. Cool. I'm happy with that. And I'll tell you something as well. In terms of Ramesses II, I don't actually think that's a mile off. You know, I like the broadness of the nose. I do. I genuinely like the broadness of the nose. If you look at Ramesses has got kind of like two sets of reconstructions. Ones that maybe have, I'm not sure if they've been tampered or not, but ones with a narrow nose and ones with broader noses. So even the ones with narrower nose, apart from the Turin statue, which I don't like. The Turin statue, I feel like there's something artificial about that. But the rest of them, like the giant bust he's got in the British Museum, he just looks really African. Regardless, he just looks really African. And the lips, I feel like they've done a good job with Ramesses' lips here. I'm happy with those lips. I actually feel like pulling up my reconstruction of Ramesses and seeing how they look alongside each other. I'm actually interested just to see how this all goes down. Bear with me 1 second. These nice little segues. I hope no one minds this little process we're going through here. This is a little bit of breaking news that's just been posted in us. It does make for interesting, you know, for some interesting stuff. So my one's obviously a lot more melanated. And I went for the shorter alveolar region. I know why they've gone for the longer alveolar region, because the alveolar region is that top lip region, by the way, above the top lip, below the nose, above the top lip. I know why they've gone for the longer one, because Ramesses' mummy, obviously their reconstruction is based on Ramesses' mummy, and Ramesses' mummy does have an extended alveolar. But if you look carefully, the teeth are behind the alveolar. So I actually think his alveolar has stretched slightly. And that's why I went for the smaller alveolar that's shown on his statues. As opposed to the longer one. That was kind of, so I feel like Ramesses kind of has a slightly, even the way his chin kind of sags, he looks like there's been an issue of gravity with Ramesses, where he was probably stored slightly upright, which has caused the face to droop somewhat. That's what I can see when I look at Ramesses' mummy. But anyway, that aside, I'm just going to pull mine up just on the screen because I'm just interested. You pull up my elderly Ramesses. Now, obviously, I'm going to suggest that my tone or my complexion for Ramesses is closer based on the fact that his mummy was jet black, and obviously all the images we have of Ramesses are a very deep reddish black. So I think that this is closer to what you would have had with the complexion of Ramesses. But the reason I want to pull this up really quickly, let me just quickly shrink this. Let me shrink it. Yeah, there we go. Let me shrink this. The reason I want to pull this up really quickly is just to basically show that I haven't been any more generous with the features than they have. We're talking about very comparative nose widths, very comparative sizes of the mouth. So yeah, we're quite close here in terms of, now obviously I think that my complexion's more, but what I'm shocked to see is they haven't gone for that usual extreme, let's make him look as Arab as possible, kind of like, let's make him have a really weird pointy hooky nose and really thin lips. They haven't done that, and I quite like that. Well done, Egyptian antiquities. This is a step of progress you've made. Congratulations. All right, that aside, now let's do what we were supposed to do, what everyone came for. Let's look at these new reconstructions. So let me close this down. Cool share, by the way, that ninja. Thanks, buddy. Just sent you a message on Discord. So this is going to take forever if we don't get just underway now. So I'm just going to crack on, and I'm going to crack on with the pace as well, because otherwise this is going to take ages. So where to start? But let's move in chronological order. We'll start with Pharaoh Djoser, because if we're talking about the building of the pyramids, well, this is where it gets quite interesting. Pharaoh Djoser's, if we're going according to the mainstream narrative, would have been the first pyramid to be built, because Pharaoh Djoser is from the 3rd dynasty, and his rule was from around 2680 BC. And the report, or the narrative, says that his pyramid, the step pyramid, was the first iteration of the pyramids built. Okay, let's get some images up on the screen. Boom, 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 boom. I need to copy that. Excuse me, guys. I'm just doing a little bit of admin here. Wunderbar. Okay, so let's pull this onto the screen. Okay, so the step pyramid of Saqqara is they say this was one of the first iterations of pyramids built, first successful iterations of pyramids built. And a lot of people actually underestimate the proportions of the step pyramid of Saqqara. I think I think some people are of the impression that it's not a very impressive structure. That's totally incorrect. It's a really impressive structure. So the step pyramid of Saqqara is a really impressive structure. It's very large, and it's still should be a very admired engineering feat. Now, the alternative perspective on the step pyramid of Saqqara, and this is where we'll go into alternatives, is there are the crowd of people who believe the Great Pyramids in the Giza complex had always been there, i.e. not always, but had been there for a very long time. And the ancient Egyptian civilization inherited at least the 3 Great Pyramids, dating them back, some people dating them back 10,000 years, other people dating them back 20,000 years. There is a kind of feeling amongst some researchers that the Great Pyramids in the Giza plateau are much older than we're told in terms of the mainstream narrative. Now, we have no way of proving or disproving this. Most of our dating and attribution of these pyramids to certain pharaohs are based on basically finding somewhere outside the pyramid a cartouche of a certain pharaoh's name or something like that. But we don't really have much, particularly like they're allegedly supposed to be tombs, but in none of the three great pyramids do we ever find a mummy. In none of the three great pyramids do we find any of the decorations or the the bas reliefs, the wall reliefs. None of those are found in any of the three great pyramids. The thing they call a tomb or sarcophagus doesn't have a lid and it's empty. So it doesn't even look like a sarcophagus. So it's got all of these things where you kind of go, maybe these weren't tombs, you know? And a lot of those people basically essentially believe, well, a lot of people believe that this was the ancient Egyptians' attempt at imitating those great pyramids. So this was, you know, Djoser's attempt / Imhotep's attempt at rebuilding or beginning to reinstruct that kind of great age of pyramid, that lost pyramid building technology. And this was actually one of the best iterations, the best versions that they got to. It's an interesting hypothesis. I don't know enough about it to promote it. But if we're going to go by the mainstream narrative is that this was the first pyramid that was built by Djoser. And Djoser's statue is one of the most well-known statues in terms of the third dynasty, because we just don't have that much remaining from the third dynasty in terms of the visage of pharaohs. So if I was to look carefully, 1 minute, let's just have a look at some of the names of third dynasty rulers. And I can tell you straight away, those which we have some kind of a visible impression for. So we have King Senect, who I haven't seen a statue for. Bejmes. I know he's a shipbuilder, not a pharaoh. King Djoser, who we're obviously looking at now, or who we're going to be looking at. Imhotep, who was the visionary polymath architect who actually designed the step pyramid of Saqqara, I should say. King Sekhemkhet, who I haven't seen a bust for. King Kaba, who I haven't seen a bust for. But then we do have King Huni, who I have seen a bust for. And King Huni is quite interesting because I'm sure most people have seen that little meme that went around, because he looks almost identical to the president of Senegal. For those of you who haven't seen the bust of Pharaoh Huni, it's a very African bust. So no one should be surprised in terms of the direction my reconstruction went. So let me just go to images. So here you go. This is the bust of Pharaoh Huni. Let me open the image in new tab. Okay. So this is what Pharaoh Huni looks like. I wish that was a bit closer. Yeah, there we go. So, you know, very, very thick and full lips, very broad nose, regardless of it being knocked off, and a very typical, you know, African look. And I would actually say people kind of like landing in and around the Senegal region. I'm not mad at that at all. I think it looks about right. So that brings us on to Pharaoh Djoser, who, those of you who know, I've already done a reconstruction of Djoser. Okay. For those of you who aren't familiar, I imagine most of you will be. This is what Djoser's statue looks like. Let me open the image in a new tab. Nerd Large, you're going to need to send us a link, man. Are you on Discord? I love the fact people are just giving me new articles and stuff and new finds. And you know what the irony is? A lot of the time I do see these, but I see so many of them. I have really hard time um, organizing and documenting all of these alongside the work that I do as well. So yeah, if you've got a image of Djoser's latest statue that's been found, I desperately need to see that because he is one of my favorite characters. Thank you. He said you'll send it in Discord later. Fine. Okay, so this is Pharaoh Djoser. Once again, I mean, like his relative, I should say, because they're in the same dynasty, like his relative or his descendant, Pharaoh Huni, who came after, or King Huni came afterwards, indisputably African features. So, by the way, as we're doing this, I do want everyone to take note of this. Of the third dynasty pharaohs, we don't have a lot of images, but we do have two busts. And can we all, at very least, agree that the two busts that we've looked at so far are indisputably African? Can we agree with that? Because you get this narrative that goes around. I don't know where it's come from. I think it's come from some of those W supremacist channels like Robert Sepper and stuff like that, who circulate these fake images, and somehow now the the talking point is, oh, the old kingdom are really European. I was like, oh, for goodness sake, seriously. The old kingdom, as we're going to explore today, is indisputably African if you want to look at the actual confirmed statues of actual confirmed pharaohs and people who we know were definitely of the nobility. It's absolutely indisputable. Okay, we can all agree that this is the face of an African man, nose missing or not, because you just can't find a non-African man or a non-melanated man with lips that protrude and are that wide. I can't even make my mouth protrude that much when it's that wide. Okay, so you know we have to be accepting of the fact that phenotypically, at least the third dynasty so far looks overwhelmingly African. So anyway, this is the bust I started with, and I started with a reconstruction that you guys have all seen, an older one that I'm just looking now and I haven't saved in that folder. So let me see if I can just quickly pull up my original reconstruction, because the one I'm going to show you now is a revised one that I think most people have seen, but I want to show you kind of where we started so you can see how the progression took place. I have like 100 versions, by the way, of every reconstruction I do, so it does get hard to keep track of how they progress. So let me show you. Here we go. This one here. In. So this was one of the earlier versions of the reconstruction that I did. And many of you will actually rightly ask, where did you get inspiration for the nose from? Because at the end of the day, if the nose is covered, you can see, obviously, done my very, very best to match all of the contours of the face, from the protruding cheekbones to the prognathic lower jaw to the thickness of the lips to the protrusion of the lips. I do my level best to match the facial features. But the nose, as you can see, it's been completely hacked off, and I've got this nose, and it's kind of like, well, where did you get that nose from? Which is a very fair question. And that kind of brings us on to our second point, which is where we look at some of the other artifacts, because I'd like to see that new statue, by the way, that someone has referenced, Nerd Large referenced earlier. But we do have a number of side view reliefs of Pharaoh Djoser that allow us. Sorry, I'm just trying to keep a clock on my screens here. That allow us to get a good idea, or at least make a good educated guess as to how his nose might have rendered from the front if we look at it from the side. Now, obviously, I'm of the school of thought that the ancient Egyptians were quite accurate in terms of their depictions. If you're not of that school of thought, then you won't like that approach. But I am of that school of thought, so therefore I am of that approach. So let me just pull up. These side views, here they are. So here is the tool, or at least the, sorry, I shouldn't say tool, the artifacts that I use to help me to inform how to progress with a side format for Pharaoh Djoser. We can see he has a very round tipped nose, quite protruding, okay, very prominent nostrils. I mean, obviously this one here, it's been knocked off, so this is one where we don't, this is the same statue we just looked at that has no nose, we just have remnants of it. But this one here gives us a good clue as to how that nose should look. And when I see that nose from sideways, I kind of know what that nose should look like from the front, just from a usual kind of standard African perspective. Someone whose nose looks like that from the side, I've got a good idea of what their nose should look like from the front. So anyway, so you've seen that first version of Djoser that I just showed you, and I kind of want to show you what the updated version looks like now. So let me I can actually just scroll to the side and pull up an updated version. So if I just click over here, this is the more latest version that I've done, and this one's allowed me to have a side view and a front view of what his nose looks like. You can also see here that I've tried to maintain one of Djoser's main signatures, which is those wonderful locks that he has. You know, this is the pharaoh whose hair was locked. Okay, it's one of the earliest renditions of really neat kind of sister locks. So this is kind of my first version of the hair. I'll show you, I did an updated version where the hair matches the statue exactly. But I wanted to preserve the fact that this was a pharaoh who probably had, well, I could say almost definitely had long hair under his Nemes, by the way, and his, sorry, yeah, under his Nemes. And by the way, the version of the Nemes that he wears, that's one of the only renditions of the Nemes where it's kind of cut off halfway across the hair and it reveals the hair underneath. It's like an early rendition of the Nemes, which is what actually makes it so, it makes it really amazing to look at. And I want to read out Trill Black's quote. By the way, shout out Trill Black, who's in the house. What's up, brother? How are you? He says, the original Egyptians are inferred from the evidence of their sculptures to have been a Negro race. It was from Negroes. And that's from J.S. Mill. And he said, these are the sculptures they saw. And I'm going to say absolutely. And if we refer to Trill Black's last live stream and some of the recent posts that I've released and the shorts that I've released, we now know that the statues that they were confronted with, these negroid, whatever you want to call them, looking statues, they have done a very good job at erasing them. They've done a very good job at defacing them. I would not be surprised if Djoser had a nose when they found him. In fact, that's my base case, because we've now been exposing the fact that they took statues that were intact back to their museums and hacked the noses off. So it's in their wheelhouse now. We now have the evidence for that. They don't have an argument for that. They don't have a comeback. It's a fact. We've proven it now. So it's kind of like, well, what do they do with that kind of information? You know, where do they go from there? How do they justify that? Let's have a look at this for some other views, and then I want to show you the updated hairstyle as well. So I'm just going to show you I'll show you the black and white version. 1 second here. I like this one because this one forces you just to concentrate on the shape, concentrate on the contours, concentrate on how consistent or true it is with all of the elements of the statue. Okay, apart from the fact that the only thing that's really added here obviously is the nose. You can see everything else follows the way that the face actually looks. Okay, and let's now look at let's look at the version with the hairstyle that I wanted to show you. So let me just quickly, yep, if I just click on here, you can see here. So this is the rendered version of the hairstyle that I wanted to show. This is the hairstyle he has here. It's not a foreign hairstyle to us Africans. I think in modern day we might call that sister locks, where it's these kind of like, it's kind of in between sister locks and normal African locks in the width of them. So they're quite fine, but also quite but also not super fine. And the thing about this hairstyle, do you see how much body it has? Only Africans or melanated people with relatively tightly curled hair are able to produce locks of that number, with that amount of body. It requires, you can't do that with incredibly loose or wavy hair. You can't produce locks of that amount of body, but you can with relatively tight, more kind of like tightly curled hair, give you that amount of body. So let me just hide that comment that Chobla's left there. So this is my rendition of the locks and the Neme's crown, kind of like sitting halfway up on the head. This is almost there. It's hard to get these things exact, but that's kind of like me getting as close as I can in terms of my skill set at that point. So yeah, thank you, Chill Black. So yeah, so this is that version. Let me just show you actually some of the more views of that, so you can kind of appreciate that. So there you go. There you can see the full head of hair there, the full head of locked hair that Djoser likely would have had. You can see, and you can see it on the statue there. It's just so you can see how thick that hair sits. Only African hair can sit that thick. Okay, there's no two ways about the fact that this is a man with thick African hair. There's just no two ways about it. These are locks. There's nothing else they could be. And he was very proud of these locks. You can see him depicted with them here. And actually, he's quite interesting because even his version, some people would say, well, that's the Khafre crown. But I always default to the fact that when they show lines or circles in the hair, they are trying to show you the hairstyle. So it looks like he had this weird upright thing going on with his hair that maybe kind of like mirrored what the Jimma of Ethiopia do with their hair. I think that's like the Jimma is like an Omotic tribe in Ethiopia. To kind of have this thing where they create these really elaborate upright styles. So he kind of does this here, and it's almost like an early iteration. I do want to actually double check to see what the earliest iteration of the not Khafre, I said the wrong crown, the Djet. I want to see what Deshret. I want to see what the earliest iteration of the Deshret crown is, and see if maybe Djoser's one might be the clue, might be the key to the fact that the Deshret in his earliest iteration was an upright hairstyle, as seems to be depicted here. It seems to be the case. Now let me show you a couple more iterations. So here's another rendition where his head's slightly turned. So you can just see, once again, I want to share with you the protrusion of the lips. Okay, it's just typically African. Okay, it's a real fullness of the mouth here. He has thick lips even for an African. I have to state that. Yeah, he has thick lips even for an African. So even as an African person, he's on the thicker lips end of the spectrum for people of African descent. It's not something that you just, these aren't something that any, Eurasian can just walk around with, you know. And if we can see this side view that I've created, I did that as a crown because I wasn't sure how to do it as a hairstyle, but in time I might revisit it and actually do the hairstyle. But you can see the kind of upright, I've just kind of like done a bit of a complicated version of the Deshret crown, but you can see how it matches the phenotype. Essentially, I wanted to create that same view that I was seeing there in human form. Okay, so that's what I had there. And then you can see kind of like a rendition of the two reconstructions against the two pieces of artwork. Once again, trying our best to be complementary to what's already been created. Okay, not trying to create anything new. We're trying to just bring to life the artworks and the statues that are already there. So we've got the same individual, okay, with different crowns on, representing the two pieces of artwork. So yeah, I think I'm trying to think if there's any more renditions of this that I need to show you, but I think I'm quite happy at that stage to move on from Djoser. So that's my reconstructions of Djoser, and that kind of brings the third dynasty to a nice conclusion there. Okay, so I think we could close that out. Nice conclusion there to the third dynasty, and we can now move on to the fourth dynasty. So our next pharaoh we'll be looking at will be, sorry, let me go through my folder and make a decision about which one we're going to look at next. Let's see how many people are here. Actually, I haven't even looked. Got 174. Cool, nice. 113 likes, 140. That's all right. Well, that's good. More than 50%. Love it. Okay, fantastic. So let's move on to our next pharaoh, who is going to be, quick drum roll. It's going to be Pharaoh. I haven't done Khufu yet, by the way. Sorry to disappoint you guys. I'm sure you're all desperate to see what Khufu would look like. It could, it's supposed to be Djedefre that I do next, but I'm going to do Djedefre last because you're going to see why when I get there. I'm going to do him last because you're going to see why when I get there, that his reconstruction was actually a really quick one. And the reason it was really quick was because I had the other two as reference. So I'm actually going to go to, my next one's going to be Khafre, because we've got a little bit of a story when it comes to how Khafre's reconstruction was put together. It's quite an interesting story that I want to take you through here. So let's do Khafre next. Okay, let me pull this off the screen. I'm trying to work with like a bunch of windows here, guys. There's got to be a better way, man. Okay. Okay, so where to start with Khafre? I mean, I guess we could start with a bit of an overview. Most of you know that Khafre is credited with building the Sphinx, although once again, in terms of the alternative outlook of, archaeologists / Egypt, alternative kind of like historians say that the Sphinx is another one of these structures that greatly predates the ancient Egyptian civilization. And it was attributed to Khafre simply because I think his cartouche was found inside one of the pores. But it could have been carved there at any time. We have no way of kind of like dating when that was placed there. But I think it just became convenient to say that Khafre was the builder. Now, there have been kind of comparisons done with the side profile of Khafre in terms of how he looks on his various statues to the Sphinx, and They don't really match. The Sphinx is actually much more. Khafre is very prognathous, but the Sphinx is actually markedly more prognathous. So it kind of, I wouldn't say it invalidates it, but it kind of brings into question whether or not the Sphinx is supposed to be a portrait of Khafre. The earliest sojourners that we have, like Dinon, etc., most of the early sojourners to ancient Egypt suggested that it was a woman. A lot of people said it was an ancient Egyptian queen, and then later on, the narrative became that it was a depiction of Khafre. So something was encouraging them to believe that it was the face of a female initially. So it's kind of like which one do we go for? But that's kind of like, once again, just giving you the background to it. Khafre is also responsible for the building of the second pyramid of Giza, and I believe it's the second largest one, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it was the second largest one. So it's not as big as Khufu's pyramid, which is the Great Pyramid. It's the second largest pyramid of Giza. And let's actually just pull up an image of that on the screen before we dive into our great Khafre reconstruction. Where's my other window? Here it is. Khafre. So here's our pyramid of Khafre, which is a very beautiful pyramid. We all know the background of the pyramids. They all used to be covered in white limestone, smooth from top to bottom, with a golden cap that has been systematically destroyed by the same Arabs and Europeans who now want to claim ancient Egypt as being their ancestors, even though they didn't want the great structures of the pyramids that had stood there for 10, 5, 6, 5,000 years, however long your timeline is, depending on what you believe, had stood there intact. Every other passing dynasty, civilization, even when Egypt had been occupied a number of times in its history, no one thought, oh, it'll be really cool, let's destroy these great monuments and build houses out of them. No one thought that, apart from the ancestors of the current occupiers of Egypt. They were the first to think, we are so disdainful of this civilization, we're going to build mosques out of the limestone that cover these great pyramids. You know why? Because they saw it as an infidels civilization. They saw it as something separate to them. They saw them as, what's the word? Pagan. They saw them as pagan African, signs of worship. That's how they viewed them. And those Copts that people are alleging are the indigenous people of Egypt, they were actually the most destructive people to ancient Egyptian artifacts and sites than any other people. The Copts were the most, they were the most destructive. Second, the Islamists that came after them were actually second to the Copts. So if we want to talk about Egyptian history, and we want to talk about all our ancestors, our uncles, our aunties, if you want to talk about that, then let's talk about your history as a whole in that region and see if you've actually acted like descendants of that region, or if you've acted like foreigners. Because I think the historical record suggests, Saladin trying to deconstruct the pyramids and giving up halfway. The historical record suggests that you were foreigners. You treated it as a foreign land. You didn't treat it as your monuments. No sane people destroys their monuments when they've built the greatest monuments in history. So, keep calling them your uncles. History knows, and no one's fooled. So anyway, let's dive into Khafre, because there's a big, massive story when it comes to Khafre. I think I've done this on another live stream, so I'm gonna just give you the headlines. The headline is One of my favorite pieces of artwork, which was Khafre enthroned, I've always loved that statue, and I had no reason to believe there was any foul play with it. I found out recently, just doing my usual kind of like inspection when I just stare at artworks and I inspect them and stare, I found out that the Khafre enthroned has a nose replacement. And they do them quite often. So let me just quickly pull up. This is Khafre enthroned. And that white line that you can see on the nose bridge is a very fine crack that traces all the way around the nose. And they completely replace the nose. And that's why the veins and the patterning changes at the line. If this was just a nose, or this was a vein, a natural vein, or a crack when they've just taken those and replaced it again, then the pattern should be consistent. But the pattern changes. Now, where they've done a really good job with this, and I believe this is one of the reasons why these Egyptian statues tended to be damaged in two places. So this is where you're going to learn something new, is that the new nose that they fashioned for Khafre, this new kind of like more pointier tip nose that they fashioned for Khafre, they got from another piece of the statue. And I actually believe they got it from the beard. You can't see because they've actually replaced the beard now, but they got it from either the beard or the arm. And this is why when you see many of these statues where the nose has been knocked off, you'll find that the beard has been damaged as well. Because I believe most of the time when they wanted to fashion a new nose, they tried to get the stone from the same statue so they could match as much as possible the grain, so people hopefully wouldn't notice that the nose has been replaced. So they attempted that with Khafre, and you have to say they did a good job, because this had me fooled for a long time. Now, why do we know that Khafre's nose has been replaced? Because Khafre has several other busts with consistent noses. Okay, so ignore the bottom right because I think that's Menkaure, but well, don't ignore it fully because Menkaure is very close relative and has a very similar nose, which we'll go on to see. But you'll see that the noses of Khafre are very consistently soft tipped, and Khafre has other statues which they don't like to show the public. So the one that we all know, Khafre enthroned, has got a code name of CG14, okay, and that's the only one that they display. But Khafre enthroned statue was found in a there was basically an entire kind of like vault of different Khafre statues. Many of them don't have heads. A lot of them are missing pieces. Some of them were just fragments of heads, etc., etc. However, there were a total of three intact statues that they found, full life-size statues, and Khafre enthroned was only one of the three. The other two, CG15 and CG41, which I'm going to show you, they never show the public. So I'm going to show you them now. This is CG15, okay? Another statue of Khafre, which you likely have never seen because they don't show it to the public. This is in perfectly good tact, and you can see his nose. You can see it's very round to the tip, and you can see that it's quite a high in terms of where it turns. It turns at quite a high point. Once again, a very African trait, which would make sense as to why they don't want to show CG15 to the public. So this is CG15. This is I believe this is in the Cairo Museum, but they keep it locked up in the back. They don't want anyone seeing this one. In addition to CG15, we also have, sorry, that's CG41. Excuse me, this is CG41. Let me get that right. This is CG41. And in addition to CG41, this is another image of CG41. Okay. So you can see it here, Khafre's very round tip nose. We also have CG15. This is also completely intact. Once again, the nose matches CG41. Can you see it has quite a high turn? It's very round tipped. Nothing like that pointy tipped, kind of almost downward pointed nose that you see with Khafre enthroned. Okay, so you can see how these actual statues of Khafre enthroned, which are really well detailed, are deliberately ignored. And it's almost like people believe that Khafre enthroned is the only version of Khafre that's available. And the reason they do that is because this is the one that they've had time to replace the nose. Let's have another look at CG15 here. Okay, so we can have a nice close-up look. Look how beautiful this statue is, but no one sees it. It's completely and almost entirely hidden from public view. Almost entirely hidden from public view. So seeing this statue or seeing these statues forced me to kind of like say, okay, cool. I think I have enough information to be able to. Someone said Khafre looks like Menkaure. I absolutely think that is the case. I was surprised how alike they looked actually when I did the reconstructions. So I'm just going to zoom ahead quickly and just show you another image of Khafre enthroned, just in case you had any doubt about whether or not that nose has been replaced. So here's a lovely top view for you can all see. So you can see where that crack forms along the nose bridge, and you can see where the stone changes. Like I said, it's a really good nose replacement, one of the best they've done, but it's not consistent with his works. And over here, I've just shown you from all views, so you can see where that line follows in all views. Okay, so they just basically replaced the tip and the nostrils of his nose. And you know, it's very typically we now know that's a very typically Egyptological thing to do. They've been doing that for years. So I'll show you version 1 of my reconstruction, which is here. So this is kind of like the first version I did, and I was actually quite pleased with this. Let me show you alongside the statue. Oh yeah, I'll show you these ones alongside the kind of like corresponding statues. So this one I kind of built from this, and then when I age adjusted it downwards, I found that it matched almost to a T CG41, which made me suggest, well, this must be an image of what he looked like when he was younger, and this must be an image of what he looked like when he was older, because that age adjusted downwards just looked almost exactly like CG41 without me doing anything. It just looked exactly the same. So I was like, that face looks like that face, and I didn't really have to do anything for me to get there. So I was like, well, then that's a young Khafre, and then this is an older Khafre. And relatively happy with the way those looked. But then I did update these slightly, and I want to show you kind of like the updated versions, if they're in this folder. In my head, I feel like I updated them, but then I don't see them in this folder. I feel like I did do an updated Khafre. I did, and I haven't copied it into this folder. Why have I not? Silly me. All right, let me try to think of the quickest way for me to do this. In fact, it might actually. I think it will be on this machine. Bear with me. Bear with me one moment as I quickly find my latest version of Khafre. How did I forget to put that in there? Boom. Okay, lucky me. I think I've got a version here. I do. I've got a version here. So let's open this up. So I'm not going to go straight to my final version. Won't take you through the little steps it took to get there, because I just realized that I haven't included all the artwork. So this is it. So this is kind of like my final version. Let me just pull it up. I want to put it up alongside CG here. I want to just put it up alongside CG 15, so you kind of see what my inspiration was. I think I've got a slightly better one, but this one will do because it's close enough. So this is kind of where I landed in the end with my reconstruction of Khafre. And I felt that that was a very good and very fair rendition of the features that I could see. So yeah, that's my Khafre reconstruction. And if you want to pull out, in fact, let me just pull out alongside all of his statues so you can see in terms of his feature set, there hasn't been any changing or exaggeration. There we go. Let me, is there a, I'm just trying to find a slide where I've got all of the statues side by side. Yeah, there's one. Okay, so I'm going to just quickly scroll across. Yeah, there's a good one. So this is a good one to show all of his statues side by side, and then my reconstruction here. And hopefully you can see that the, well, I know that's Menkaure, I've already said, but in terms of the other ones, you can kind of see that the reconstruction is a nice aggregation of the various depictions of Khafre. And by the way, Khafre's, this is another thing that goes understated. Khafre is another one of these. It carries through from the third dynasty to the fourth, even though whether or not they're related, they have really large lips throughout these dynasties. And the reason I say that is because looking at them, you might think, oh, his lips don't, but his lips are actually really large. The reason I say that is because they keep a lot of body, but the mouth is very spread. So if you was to make your mouth as spread as Khafre's, even right now in the mirror, you'll notice that your lips thin quite a lot. When I might spread my mouth that much, my lips are thinner than Khafre's are being displayed, and I have full lips. I have very full lips. So this is a full lips is a very much a fourth dynasty trait, I find. A very fourth dynasty trait. They might not look full on first appearance, but when you actually create the human reconstruction, you realize that's a very full mouth. A very, very full mouth. So yeah, there you go. That's Khafre done. Let's move on. Our next pharaoh is how many we got? 206. Okay, we're doing good for numbers. I'm glad. Let me know if this is okay for you guys, pace wise. I'm just going to carry on cracking on through these reconstructions. Boom. Okay. So yeah, we're going to move on to Menkaure, as many of you probably guessed. And Menkaure is the builder of the third pyramid of Giza. That's the smallest one. And people kind of see this as the kind of like start of the decline of the pyramid age, because they weren't able to build those large pyramids afterwards. But once again, it all depends on your perspective on the timeline and the chronology of when these pyramids were actually built in the first place. But you get a bit of an idea there. Let's now move on to Menkaure, and I'm going to show you the source materials that I used. Yeah, let's move on to Menkaure. I'll show you the source materials that I used, and then we'll show you the reconstructions. Bear with me as I get this organized. I had a lot of fun doing Menkaure, I'm not going to lie. A lot of fun. One of the reasons I actually really enjoyed doing Menkaure, actually to share with you guys, is because Menkaure, we have we have riches essentially of depictions of Menkaure. We have a lot of different depictions. We have good amount of depictions of Khafre as well. So I had a bit of fun with him, but I feel with Menkaure, you get a lot more of his life character. So we had this similar thing when we were doing the reconstructions of Amenhotep III, when we got the character at different ages in their life, but on top of having them at different ages, we also have like fluctuations in their appearance, in their weight. It just makes them feel really real. And Menkaure is one of these guys who we see him go from very chiseled six pack, chiseled facial features to a more middle-aged looking Menkaure, where you could see he's just been living the good life, and the cheeks get really full, and he takes on that real kind of uncle appearance. So I like that. I like the realness of that. And it does make for a really interesting set of reconstructions. So let's start off with just looking at actually some depictions of Menkaure. Yeah, we'll kind of go from there. So let's where should we go? Let's start from here. Now, those of you not familiar with depictions of Menkaure, he has a number. When I say a number, I mean numerous depictions of him, either him and his wife, or him in a triad like this with Hathor on one side and his wife on the other. And they are very, very highly detailed portraits that really, I think, give us a really kind of unequivocal look of what he looked like. Now, there also is a slight, I don't want to use the word issue, but it is a bit of an issue, where I feel like in the cleaning process, in fact, let's just have a quick look at his pyramid as well, because we've been doing that consistently as well. So let's have a look at his pyramid, because that's actually an interesting story. So this is his pyramid, and it has that huge gash in the side. Now, it's really funny because Egyptologists admit to Europeans using dynamite to enter the pyramids, but they also blame this gash on Saladin and the Arabs. It was kind of like, will you ever believe them? You know, it's like, who's gonna actually tell the truth about this? Because this is a crime against humanity, whoever created this gash. And to me, I'll be honest with you, I think Saladin was just interested in destroying the pyramids. He wasn't interested in getting inside. The nature of this just feels innately European to me. So on this occasion, I'm going to blame this on the Europeans, because this is just has their name all over it. The kind of disdain that they hold for anything is just kind of like, is just this is just what they do, you know? Can I give a quick shout out to Dame Dash? Thank you very much for your donation, sir. Said another fire reconstruction. Keep going, bro. I appreciate that. And actually, let me just scroll through the comments, because there was a period of time where I didn't have my eye on them. We'll see if anyone else is. No, I think we're good. So thank you very much, Dame Dash. I really appreciate that. So yeah, with that said, let's go back and have a look at some of the different depictions of Menkaure. So we have them here in that triad that I've just shown you, and I'm going to show you another view of that triad, because this is a beautiful picture, just to give you a real close-up look of what his face looked like. Okay, really, really detailed and expressive. One of the things I want you to get as well from this family, I should say, this kind of fourth dynasty family, we saw it in Khafre, we're seeing it in Menkaure as well, and we're going to see it in Djedefre, is they have really full faces. They haven't got drawn, gaunt, or narrow faces. They've got really full faces. They have really wide mouths, okay? And I have to express how much, you know, wide mouths is a very, very quintessential African trait, and they have very wide mouths. Their mouths are wider, you know, than your average kind of person. Really wide mouths, very generous proportions in terms of their lips. And you can even see from here, the nose is quite wide as well. This is just a running trait of the fourth dynasty. So it's almost impossible to create any other face other than an African from this statue. Okay, unless you are really desperate to, in which case, you know, I've actually seen a reconstruction of Menkaure where they've kind of made him look Arab, and it's not bad at first glance until you look at it closely and you realize they've made all of his features smaller, which is what they always do. They have a really hard time obeying the features. You can see from the reconstruction that I showed you guys what I said on the thumbnail that I had no problem making his features identical. No problem whatsoever. That mouth is exactly the same size. Those lips are exactly the same size. That nose is exactly the same size. No problems whatsoever. In fact, just looking at my reconstruction now, I could have made his nostrils a bit bigger. I could have made his, but it's all of those factors together that come together, including his full cheeks, that make it look quintessentially African. So let's now just, in fact, I want to show you a couple more pieces as well. So we've looked at that piece. Let's look at another piece. I wanted to show you something that I found that was a little bit more disturbing. It's quite subtle, but I think it's worth sharing. I shared it with guys on my Discord will probably know what I'm going to get onto, because I actually asked them this question before doing this reconstruction. And I'll actually ask it to you guys as well to see if you can see it. I want to show you before and afters of Menkaure and his wife. This is when they found it on the right. And this is what it looks like now on the left. And I couldn't make my mind up as to whether or not, and I'm still undecided as to whether or not it's been tampered. I feel like it, I just feel like it has, but I can't put my nose on it. Boom, what it is that's different about it. It just feels different. And it's very subtle, but it feels like when the opportunity was, I mean, someone said the nose looks smaller, and I think that's what it is. If you just look at where the bridge is, I feel like where the bridge of the nose is, let me just draw around that. Where the bridge of the nose is, I feel like there's been some narrowing. Okay, that's kind of what it feels like. It feels like there's been some narrowing. This one just looks like it kind of gets wider towards the bottom, whereas this one kind of gets narrower and then gets wider. Now, a lot of people might look at that and go, you're reaching. But I just look at these, and when I saw the dig, the one they found in the dig, I was like, oh, that looks right. And then when I saw that one, I was like, why does that look different now? Why does she no longer look like, you know, the same woman? Just something really subtle about it. I don't know what it is. Okay. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you because it's not just happened with her, it's happened with Menkaure as well. The one on the left now is the original. And then this is what it looks like now that it's kind of been cleaned up and looked after. Just looks a bit different. Just looks a bit different. And I just can't put my nose on it. It just looks different. So anyway, that's what I wanted to share with you because that was just something that I'd picked out. Okay. That being said, I think now we can have a look at some of these reconstructions. So let's start off with, I'll start where I start. In fact, let me sort the folder because that'll make it easier. Sort by last modified. Yeah, boom. Excellent. So we can start here. So this was my first, oops. Sorry guys, thanks for your patience. This was my first reconstruction that I did of Khafre. Let me just quickly pull it on the screen. And the key here for me was to obey all of the phenotypic traits that was being communicated to me by the statue. In terms of the statue that I used, it was this one. So you guys, I just want you to be able to see. Can I fit them both on the screen? Yeah, I can. Oops. Let me just pull this to the side. I want to show you these side by side. There we go. And let me just zoom in a bit. There. So this is kind of where I started, and I wanted to get those full cheeks that he portrays here, the full mouth, everything, make sure the nose width matched and the features. The one thing that I feel like I almost got, but still could get a little bit better, he's got very bulging eyes. Look at the way his eyes bulge. Okay. That's something that I almost got. I got close. I'm not gonna lie. The eyes look good, but they don't quite have that bulge. And that's just another, once again, another regional trait that will really give them quite a distinctive look. But I was quite happy with that. So that was kind of like my version 1. Okay. And then let me move on now. Yeah, I'm just going to scroll through actually, because this scrolling through will give us kind of the order of attack. So yeah, I think I made a slight adjustment to the nose there to make it match the statue a bit more. And you can see, I want to show you now the range of his artwork as well, because this is quite key. This one has a slightly chubbier face, as you can see. So this is kind of like an in-between as to when he's kind of gaining that weight. But either which way, these all fed in somewhat to the development of the reconstruction here. Okay. You can see how the features, how they match. Then, let me just scroll along. I've got a few more collages here that I can share with you. So you kind of see how it looks alongside the collages. Now, someone said about Menkaure and Khafre looking alike. So this is kind of like my first kind of like comparison with my old reconstruction of Khafre and Menkaure, but you can see there's definitely a familial consistency there. They have really similar faces. Yeah. Some people said Khafre sounds a little bit Ghanaian. So does Khufu. Here's an interesting one. South Africa was called Khafreria before, and I think there's a link there as well. I know a lot of people say, "Oh, Khafreria was a slur." It wasn't a slur when they first encountered it. That's what they called it from their very first. The Europeans called it from their very first encounter. It was called Khafreria, and I believe there's a link there. I believe there's a link to a kingdom perhaps established by Khafre in the south that retained its name for a long time. But I've got a bit of research to do there. But I'll enjoy doing that because, yeah, I just feel like they're linked. Khufu as well, obviously sounds really Ghanaian. People have mentioned before. And then the statues do somewhat give a little bit, the reconstructions do somewhat give a little, lean a bit towards that region, I do admit. I've actually got a good friend of mine, Ghanaian friend of mine, who looks a lot like this reconstruction. I do need to send it to him actually. So anyway, let me move forward because I didn't progress onto a front view that I want to show you all. Okay. So this is one of the earliest versions of the front view that I produced. Okay. And this was based on various views of Khafre that we can see. So this is close to the thumbnail. Okay. Where you can see the various busts of Khafre, what they look like, and how it kind of produced that front view. And just some other comparisons here from the front view. So you can see how those features fall. And then here, the two views, kind of the front view and a slightly turned view. Now, bear in mind, I did these separately. So if people are thinking, well, they look a little bit different, I'm happy to put my hand up and say, yeah, they do look marginally different, not very different, but they look marginally different because they were kind of created separately. But that also goes to show that if you're obeying the features of the statue, it's just still, regardless of the process you take, it's just still bring you back to, in a roundabout way, to the same kind of face. And by the way, this gets a bit more interesting as well. So this, now we're going to move on to a larger Khafre, okay? Because he actually, like I said, gains weight. And this is where it gets really interesting. So what do I mean when I say he gains weight? Well, I mean, we have, if this catches up with me, let's get the head there, yeah, sorry. We have this bust, which I absolutely love, of Khafre, okay? I absolutely love this bust. And when I saw this bust, I was like, okay, I can see two things here. A, he's older, and B, he's definitely gained weight. So what did I do? I didn't have to do that much. I took my reconstruction that I'd already created, I made him older, and I added a bit of weight on. And I kid you not, it just created the face. I mean, it's just the same face. So all I've done is add the weight on and add a little bit of age on, and I was able to produce an almost identical bust to this bust here. Now, this is the bust I like because it also has the twists. That's the one thing I haven't done, is it has the kind of twists poking out of the crown. That's why I really do love these Old Kingdom statues, by the way, because you'll see little traits that they have that you don't get on. By the time of the Middle and New Kingdom, they'd kind of done away with all of these experimentations with the Nemes, and we only ever get one kind of view of the Nemes where nothing's showing through it. But in the Old Kingdom, you get all of these different quirks where one pharaoh is trying it and his kind of dreads are showing at the front, another pharaoh is trying it and his dreads are hanging over his shoulder. So we get a lot of experimentation with how the crowns of Kemet were worn, and I really like that feature that we get in the Old Kingdom. So I need to add that, but you can see that that is the same face. And for those of you, if there's anyone doubting how similar the faces are, I will do an overlay shortly so you can see how well they match. So anyway, that brings me on to the more final version, which is this one, which I was really, really pleased with. When I got here, I was like, I felt like I'd landed. I was like, yeah, this, it's only small, subtle changes that have been made to the face, but I was like, this now looks like the statues. This looks like all of the statues. Okay. So you can see here, alongside the busts, it just felt like this one landed really nicely. And I'm just going to show you some progression images. Now, I know that this is Shepsekhaf in the bottom right here, but once again, he's in that same dynasty, in that same lineage, and you'll find, as you can see with Shepsekhaf, that he has a very similar face. So when it comes to actually doing the reconstruction of Shepsekhaf, I think I'm going to find it relatively easy. I think I'm going to find it quite easy, because if you look at the faces of Khafre and Menkaure, that the lineage is very strong in terms of the genetics are very strong in terms of the phenotype. They definitely are passing on features to one another that look really, really strong. So yeah, you can see that. Now I want to show you, I want to go back to the kind of like full faced one and show you an overlaid comparison so you can appreciate how well these match. So this is the full faced one. You can see the more full faced statues where he's getting a bit bigger. Okay. And then I just want to show you that overlaid so you can appreciate how close these are. So there you go. That's the overlaid version. so you can see how well feature-wise these match. Okay, so anyone doubting, if you believe that this bust favors a European more, you're welcome to show me the overlay. I'm happy to see. I'm sure you'll do a really good job convincing everybody. But like you can see here, there's no reach in here. This is just what they look like. We don't have to do any reaching in terms of their features. Like we said before, we're not changing the way any of these pharaohs look. Okay, we're keeping them looking as they do. Now, actually, let me just move forward to. I'm going to move past the video. Would I have to play the video to get past it? Sorry, let me just get out of that. That's really annoying. Give me a second, guys. Now I want video. Let me go past that. Here. Now I really like this version that I'm about to show you, because this once again is this is like an in-betweeny, where he's got kind of a slightly more chubbiest face, so you can see it kind of sits in between the two busts, but still matches really nicely. And then I've also got a slimmer version of him like that. So this is kind of close to where I ended up, the one on the left. Actually, no, yeah, for the angled version, I would say. And let's have a look. Overlaid once again, for anyone who wants to kind of like question or doubt whether or not that's the face of an African. And I think, yeah, other than that, I'll just show you one more composite. This is the last kind of composite piece, but I think that's kind of roughly where I landed with my Menkaure reconstruction. So I was actually really happy with that. I love the fact that this reconstruction put me through its paces in terms of the different depictions, showing him older with a slightly fuller face, younger and slimmer, and the fact that once again being able to create a single face and it spanning across the various depictions was quite satisfying. So yeah, that's my reconstruction of Pharaoh Menkaure, or King Menkaure, I should say. And that brings us on to our last reconstruction, which should really be our briefest, which is Djedefre. So I know that Djedefre comes before Khafre and Menkaure in terms of order, and his actual pyramid doesn't exist anymore. Well, it does exist, but we just have the foundations of it. It's all been crumbled down. No doubt it probably went towards building some high quality mosques, but yeah, we won't get into that right now. But let's have a look. Let's start with having a look at his pyramid to see how that actually looks at the moment. So yeah, this is what we're left with in terms of Djedefre's pyramid. It's not that impressive anymore, as you can see. Unfortunately, I've got another view of it here as well. But I guess the one thing you can see is like it's the size of a small mountain. So I'm sure in its heyday, it must have been something relatively impressive. Must have been something relatively impressive. I think they're unsure about how far they actually got with the construction of this pyramid and if it was actually ever properly finished. But yeah, that's Djedefre's pyramid as it looks at the moment. But let's look at his reconstruction, because really, when it comes to Djedefre, we only have one bust. So I'm gonna share that bust with you guys, and then we're just gonna kind of like move through until we get to our reconstruction. Okay, So there's not really that, because there's only one bust, there's not that much of a story to take you through. Now, the one thing we can agree on is that the nose is missing. Okay. Someone said, where's Djedefre's pyramid? It's in Abu Rawash, I think it's called Abu Rawash, if I remember correctly. So yeah, it's in Abu Rawesh or Abu Rawash, and yeah, so it's still there, but just rubble remaining. But this is the bust of Djedefre that we have, and I've always actually wanted to do the reconstruction of this bust, because to me, the bust was so obviously African. Okay, it's so, I mean, if you just look at the alveolar region, the length and the girth of the top lip is huge. Okay. Nerd Large says shocker, the nose has been chiseled off, obviously. But what I did in terms of the production of the reconstruction was basically say, well, look, we know we have this really strong familial chain that runs through. In fact, let me just pull up the fourth dynasty, because there are pharaohs in the fourth dynasty. We know what their noses look like, so we can kind of, to me, it was kind of like, well, look, if these pharaohs all kind of look alike, can we be a bit cheeky and just kind of like let him inherit, or maybe be the progenitor of that nose? Because we have Khufu now. Now, in fairness, Menkaure, Khafre, and Shepshekaf's nose don't look like Khufu's. Khufu's nose is a lot flatter. For those of you who haven't seen Khufu's statue, you can just pull it up. It's a lot flatter. But after Khufu is Djedefre, who's kind of like the progenitor to then Khafre, Menkaure, and Shepsekaf, and they all have the same nose. So I just thought, well, look, I guess he's got the wide mouth. Can we let him have the nose? Would that be fair to do, to let him have the nose? You know, that's kind of like my thought. So I basically gave him the nose of kind of like a combined version of the nose that fitted of the reconstructions I did afterwards. I gave him the same nose just to see how it would look. Now, I'll put my hand up and say this is a complete guess. We don't have his nose. His nose has been destroyed on all of his statues, by the way. His nose has been destroyed. We have a fragment where it's half of his statue and his nose has been destroyed. But we do have these really strong facial features. And to me, I look at that and I already know what kind of African face to expect. So let's just kind of have a look at these from some different views. You can see him there. Look at that, those very full lips, very protruding and full lips. He has very African facial structure. It's just one of those faces that you look at and you know, it's just, this is the kind of fragment that I was talking about, where you get an idea and it gives you a little bit more of the nose, but it's still kind of like missing. But it's this one more than anything that we're going to be relying on. Here's a really nice side profile view, and you just get a really good impression of his face there. That's strongly prognathic. It's a really nice view there, so you don't have any doubts about who he is. There again, very full and wide mouth from both views, so you get a good idea of what he might be looking like. Okay, so this is a nice little compilation of the various views of the bust. And then this is kind of like my first version of where I landed with it. Okay. And this to me is what I saw in my head. I was actually really pleased. This wasn't one of those reconstructions, I'm going to be honest with you, where it took me a really long time to build it. It was actually really quick. It's almost like when you're producing a good bit of music. It just kind of like the best beats just kind of like just happen straight away. It was kind of the same here, right? You could kind of see, and the nose here, as you can see, this is the same nose, like I said, the one that is kind of like carried on in this dynasty's familial line, just to fit the proportions that I could see on the statue. So this is where I ended up. I tried to also obey how far the nose reached out in relation to the width of the mouth. So I tried to obey all of that, and the end of it was quite a naturalistic looking face. Now, once again, I put my hand up. This is a speculative. The center of the face is very speculative here. I'm happy to admit that. We can't say with authority this is what his nose looked like. It could have been entirely different. We just don't know. But in order to give this pharaoh a face, I was happy, you know. I was happy to say that that was the right look for him. So I was quite happy with that. Let's have a look. I think I've got one that's at a 9. In fact, yeah, let's go to the next slide. Could we get some comparisons? Because I think for anyone who's doubting how much the reconstruction I've done matches the proportions, here's an overlay. Okay. And here's a side by side. So you can see there's been absolutely zero exaggeration of the features. Zero. No exaggeration of the features, no exaggeration of the protrusion, no exaggeration of the facial features. Everything is literally absolutely identical. Okay. The only difference here is on my side, he has a nostril. On this side, there is no nostril because obviously the nose has been knocked off. But you can see that mouth is exactly, if anything, my mouth is slightly smaller than the mouth on the statue itself. So if those lips look big now that I've brought it to life, it's because the statue has big lips. That's why. Okay. A few people said that he looks like KB Lame. Thank you very much, Surfactant, for your $5 donation. And I wouldn't disagree. I think it does look like KB Lame. Why not? Why not? So this is just a little bit of a collage. So you can see the statue overlaid with the reconstruction. So you can see there hasn't been any exaggeration to any of the features, because when we do reconstructions, we don't need to exaggerate features, as you know. And then there's just a few different views. There you go. It's a black and white view, so you can appreciate the features. Yeah. I mean, I'm being very peaceful today. A lot of people are leaving really stupid comments that I could just bury, but I can't be bothered. I'm not sure. Unless you guys want me to. If you want me to, I can bury the dissenters. It's no problem. I'm just trying to be peaceful here. I'm trying to turn over a new leaf for 2025. So this is a nice little kind of like side-ish view. Okay. And I'm going to show you another kind of collage view there. So there you go. It doesn't really progress that much with Djedefre. I'm just pleased with the way that reconstruction came out. I'm glad you feel me, Black Kemet. You know, you're just trying to be peaceful. Okay. I mean, you do get comments like this, which I just put on because I find them funny. It's kind of like you have mongoloids with big lips and big noses. You research phenotypes by study of bones and DNA, dude. Okay, but see, the simple answer to the question is, well, where are the mongoloids in Africa, my friend? Have they pulled up mongoloid bones? Okay. And by the way, we've done the research of bones. Yeah, you're coming to the wrong channel talking about bones, because you'll hear more about anthropometrics on this channel than we'll hear on any other channel. We're happy to talk about bones. We will show you the bones of New Kingdom pharaohs, 18th and 19th dynasty, who have super negroid limb proportions that match those of elongated East Africans. Okay, that's what the bones of the pharaohs say. You want to talk craniometrics? We can talk about the craniometrics of the pharaohs that are almost exclusively dolichocephalic, with long skulls, with low vaults that match African phenotype almost one to one. Once again, in the same region. Yeah, so what's the point in bringing up Mongoloids when Mongoloids, who by the way have the opposite limb proportions of Africans, who have very short distal segments and very long torsos, their morphology is not seen. Also, their craniometrics, their brachycephalic skulls, which are almost square from vertical view, are absolutely not seen in ancient Kemet. Nowhere to be seen. Zero Mongoloid. So the fact that you're reaching for Mongoloid, oh well, the Mongoloids have big lips. This is the desperation that Eurocentrists do. They'll cling on to any other civilization to explain it. Oh well, the Egyptians look Asian. Well, I'm sorry, the bones don't match Asians. The skin doesn't match Asians. The anthropometrics don't match Asians. The craniometrics don't match Asians. The genetics don't match Asians. Asians are irrelevant to this conversation. We're able to prove everything we say. You need to do better, sir. Okay, you're not coming into this isn't some kindergarten, face matching experiment that we're doing here. We know what we're talking about. Okay, so start again. Thank you. All right. Hair doesn't match either. Yeah, I mean nothing matches, but they'll bring up Asians because they'll prefer them to be Asians because they know they're not European. They know they don't have. He couldn't say, "Oh, Europeans have big lips and big noses." He couldn't say that, so he had to find the only other population that have big noses and big lips, apart from the fact that nothing else matches. Absolutely nothing else matches. That's how desperate they are. Let's ignore the populations that actually live along the Nile, that actually look like this. Yeah, let's ignore them and let's talk about people thousands and thousands of miles and oceans away in a desperate plea to find a match. Oh, please give us a match. Please give us a match. You're desperate. And it's embarrassing. Even Zaya Hawass is joining our side now. Look at his latest reconstruction. You're on the wrong side of history, mate. Trust me. So anyway, yeah, roast over, and I think that's it. Is it? Is that it? I think that's it. That's our 4 reconstructions. Yes, we've covered Djoser, we've covered Khafre, Menkaure, and then Djedefre. I wanted to share these reconstructions with you and just kind of have a record for them. So that's been done now. I really hope you guys have enjoyed the live stream. I've enjoyed sharing these new reconstructions with you. Let me quickly have a quick search through the comments before I kind of roll out. Pepperin7, how you doing, sir? Says you got a bit of rewinding to do. No problem. It was pretty relaxed pace, guys. Let me know, was the pace okay? I know it wasn't like the all singing, all dancing, exciting live streams we sometimes have, but sometimes just walking through these reconstructions I feel can be worthwhile, so you can kind of see what my process was, what my inspiration was. Let me address a couple of things as well. I am aware that all 4 of these reconstructions are quite dark skinned, darker than my normal reconstructions. They don't look like the kind of deep reddish brown of the New Kingdom that I normally settle on. These are 4 very dark skinned reconstructions. What was my motive for that? My motive was it didn't look right with other complexions. This looked the most natural. That's the only argument that I can give to it. Me choosing that complexion, this just looked like it was the complexion that fitted the phenotype. I obviously could have gone redder or more towards, yeah, kind of like that red kind of modern Nubian color, which sometimes I default to. But I think on this occasion, this looked like it just looked right. And that's it. I don't really have an argument beyond that. We know when it comes to a lot of the complexion work, it's got to be guesswork, and I'll just try and match the phenotype. Sometimes I go like, for instance, it's complete opposite. When I did my reconstruction of Pharaoh Nama, I did him really light skinned, but it matched the phenotype to me. It looked right. He had that kind of like look at that Djoser look. He had that look where it's kind of like, yeah, that looks kind of like right for him, and this is right for them. I feel like this dynasty is right for them, and we'll see how it moves on as I carry on. I do want to finish the fourth dynasty. There's a lot of good statues. I do need to do Pharaoh Huni of the third dynasty, but then I want to do Shepsekaf. They'll be quite easy to do. They're kind of like remaining fourth dynasty pharaohs. So let's get the fourth dynasty completely done, and that would be nice to get that out of the way. Can I give a shout out to Dregar001? $2 donation is appreciated. So it's clearly a dark-skinned European spaceman. I agree. That's what it is. It's a dark-skinned European who basically, just had clearly just, overhang Habsburg jaw and overhang lips, extreme sunburn, nothing to do with the Africans who actually live in the Nilo-Saharan region. Nothing to do with them. Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah. So yeah, there we go. I think we're at the end of that live stream. Hope you enjoyed it, everybody. It's very late here. It's 22 midnight. But once again, we did another live stream under 2 hours on a bit of a roll. I quite like these. It means I've got a bit of stamina, and it means I can do them more regular. So let's wrap it up there. 1 second. Just reading the last of the comments. Yeah, no, there's yeah, cool. I'm gonna wish you all a good night. Let me say bye to all of you. I can see Patrina, Hervey, Nerd Large, Surfactant, Candy Danda, KJ, Dregar, Talia, Black Kemet, Mussy. We've got a busy chat today. I love it. The Dons, Will William, Medjai, Kepara, Ra Amun. That's a name and a half. Michael Ashley Johnson, the Woke Cushy. Woke Cushy, you've changed your name. Your name used to be something Mengitsu, didn't it? Anyway, I can't remember. You said thanks again, TKM. Continue the good work. The truth is fighting to see the light. It's getting there, my people. Patience, but fight on. Absolutely. Macy, good to have you here. Great Blackness. What a crowd. Fantastic. All right. So everybody have a fantastic evening. Thank you, those of you who donated. Hope everyone had a fantastic live stream, and I will see you all on the next one. Peace.